James, your name is Toby. I want to hear you say it. Your name is Toby. You're going to learn to say your name. Let me hear you say it. What's your name?
Kunta Kinte.
When the master gives you something, you take it. He gave you a name. It's a nice name. It's Toby. And it's going to be yours till the day you die.
You've just heard that scene, the one that stopped a generation in its tracks. What is your name? Kunta Kinte. And again, what is your name? Kunta Kinte. The crack of a whip. Your name is Toby. Kunta Kinte. It's raw, it's brutal. And for many people watching Roots back in 1977, it was the first time they were asked to see slavery through the eyes of the enslaved, not just as a page in a textbook, but as personal history. But here's the thing. That wasn't just a story. Kunta Kinte wasn't invented. He was remembered. He was born in a real village in a real country, right here in West Africa. And today we're going to walk through his side of the ocean. Because the story of slavery didn't start in Virginia. It started here, on this coastline, with a name. The Gambia River flows slow and wide, winding deep into the heart of West Africa like a soft thread stitching stories together. On its banks lies the village of Jufureh, a quiet place today, just a few thatched roofs, sandy lanes, but in the 1700s, this was part of a thriving Mandinka kingdom with its own rules, its own rhythms, its own rituals. No one here thought of themselves as African or even Gambian. They were Mandinka or Wolof or Serahule, and they belonged to families, lineages, clans, and their names mattered. When a child was born, the griot, the oral historian, was called, not just for celebration, but for documentation. Because in this part of the world, history wasn't written down, it was spoken into memory. The name you were given connected you to your ancestors, your community, your role. A name was never just a label. It was a story. It was a claim to existence. Kunta Kinte was one of those children. He would have grown up herding goats, learning the Quran, listening to drumming, watching masked dances. He'd have known the sound of the kora, the smell of peanut stew, the stories of his forefathers going back generations. The people here were not living in some kind of prehistoric blank space waiting to be discovered. They had political systems, trade routes, spiritual beliefs, a sense of identity, a world with meaning. And then something shifted. One day, ships arrived, not for gold, not for spices this time, but for people. And slowly, the river that had always carried life began to carry lives away. At first, it was just a few, then hundreds, then thousands, then millions. And somewhere along that muddy riverbank, a teenager named Kunta Kinte disappeared. Not because of a tribal raid, not because of a family feud, but because someone had decided that his body had a price. Now, it's easy to talk about the transatlantic slave trade in numbers, 12 million, maybe 15, ships, ports, cargo, commodities. But the truth is, it wasn't cargo being loaded onto that ships, it was people. Sons, daughters, farmers, teachers, drummers, storytellers, and yes, Mandinka teenagers who refused to forget their names. In this part of West Africa, Senegal, the Gambia, the trade unfolded in a complex and devastating way. Some local rulers made deals with the European traders. Others resisted, often violently. Entire communities were torn apart. There were betrayals between neighbors, there were alliances with colonial powers, there were wars stoked by European demand for human beings. And the Gambia River became a highway of heartbreak. Captives were marched from inland villages to the coast, often in chains. Some were held in makeshift prisons, dark, hot, airless rooms in stone forts built by the British, the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese. Places like Kunta Kinte Island, which was once called James Island, still stand today, battered by time but heavy with silence. Across the water in what's now Senegal, Gorée Island became another gateway. The Maison des Esclaves, the House of Slave, still draws visitors today. People come to walk through its narrow stone hallways to see the iron shackles on display and to stand at the edge of the door of no return, which faces the open sea. Now that name wasn't poetic, it was literal. If you went through that door, you weren't coming back. And what many people forget is this wasn't just a system of oppression. It was also a system of erasure. Languages were stripped away, spiritual traditions were mocked or banned, and names, they were one of the first things to go. Kunta Kinte became Toby. Others became Jack or Jane or Boy or worse. Because when you take away someone's name, you don't just remove their label, you sever their roots, you unwrite their history. But here's what's extraordinary. Some resisted even that. They braided rice seeds into their hair so that the memory of home could be replanted. They sang songs in secret languages, and they told stories about where they came from, about who they had been. And over time, even across oceans, those stories found their way back. Back to villages like Jufureh, back to rivers like the Gambia, back to griots who remembered names long after the world tried to forget them. Because the trade stole people, yes, but it didn't steal everything. Not forever. But even after the slave trade was abolished, first on paper, then eventually in practice, West Africa didn't suddenly find peace. Europeans didn't leave. They just changed their tactics. And by the late 19th century, France, Britain, and others were scrambling to grab territory across Africa, not because of people this time, but for the land, resources, power. And the Berlin Conference of 1884 formalized this land grab as European powers sat around a table dividing up a continent like slices of a cake, and no Africans were invited. Senegal became part of French West Africa, a large block of territory stretching from the Atlantic to the Sahara, but the Gambia, that stayed British. Why? Because of the river. The British had long controlled small trading posts along the Gambia River, which they used for commerce and earlier for shipping enslaved people. France wanted to absorb that entire area into Senegal, but Britain refused. They insisted instead on keeping that corridor along the river, seeing it as way too important to give up. And the result, well, an agreement was drawn up, and the Gambia became a thin British-controlled strip about 15 to 30 miles wide, completely surrounded by French territory. If you look at the map, you see it immediately. That's it. The Gambia looks like someone sliced a ribbon out of Senegal with a knife, and that is more or less what happened. With colonization came new rules, new names, new languages. French and English replaced Wolof and Mandinka in schools, and European history became the official version of events. And African stories, African voices, well, they were written out. Which brings us to one of the most galling statements ever made about this continent. In 1963, as many African countries were winning independence, British historian Hugh Trevor Roper wrote, "Perhaps in the future, there will be some African history to teach. But at present, there is none. There is only the history of the Europeans in Africa. Let that sink in. After all the kingdoms, the empires, the art, the science, the suffering, the survival, nothing. No history. And as we'll soon hear, some still say no future either. But let's go back to that scene, the one we started with. A man stripped of his name, stripped of his family, stripped of his language, his past, his place. What is your name? Kunta Kinte. But here's the part we often miss. This wasn't just a man being beaten. That was a memory being beaten, a history, a whole continent's story trying to be erased. And somehow, across centuries and oceans, that name survived. Because stories survive, names survive, even when we're told they don't matter. And yet there are still people, still today, who echo that earlier voice. There are people who will tell you with full confidence, Africa is a country without a history and without a future. What an appalling statement. Let's break it down. First up, Africa is a country? No, it's a continent. And not just any continent. It's one with the most countries, 54 in total. Next is Asia with 47, then Europe with 44. And yet people still talk about Africa like it's a single homogeneous block. It isn't, it never has been, and likely never will be. As for the idea that Africa has no history, well, that's laughable if it weren't so damaging. It has histories, plural. Histories that were nearly torn away, buried, renamed, rewritten, but never fully lost. So what about a future? Is Shakira right? Is it time for Africa? Well, let's find out. But first, let's open the portal. And we're going to take a closer look at our next two ports of call, Banjul in the Gambia and Dakar in Senegal. So, you'll find Banjul sitting quietly at the mouth of the Gambia River, not shouting for attention, but packed with history. This was once the heart of Britain's colonial hold in West Africa, a key spot for the transatlantic slave trade, a place where cultures collided and coexisted, and today it's the capital of the Gambia, which is Africa's smallest mainland country, where the echoes of Mandinka tradition mix with the reminders of British rule, and daily life moves to a rhythm of music, storytelling, and street chatter. It's not a flashy city, but it is full of character with roots that run deep. This is what the port area looks like, and as you can see, even if you're not intending on going too far, you can still get yourself a souvenir along with your port fees. So right at the port side, there are some local market traders who will pop up. There's also a shuttle bus that will take you out to the main market. I'll show you that on a map in a moment. And at the port gate, you'll be able to pick up taxis if you prefer. Here it is on a map. So you'll see I've put two buses there, and that's because one bus is going to run just to the port gate and back. If you want to then go and get your own private transportation, or maybe you're meeting your own private tour operator, then you would get on the port gate shuttle. There's only one bus going to be doing that. All of the other buses are going to go to the bus that's higher up on the map, and that is the market. And so, brilliant place to be dropped off because you're at the central market there. It's busy, it's loud, it's full of things to go and see. So, very short ride to get to the exit of the port, slightly longer, but it's only 7 minutes to go up the road to the market. All right, let's get into our top 10. And we might as well start where the shuttle bus drops us off, which is right outside the Royal Albert Market. This is Banjul's main marketplace. It's a real introduction to daily life here. It is loud, lively, it's full of surprises. And you walk through the opening arcade, they've got blaring music, friendly hawkers, and you find this maze of stalls selling everything from dried fish, palm oil to shea butter, plastic buckets, second-hand clothes from Europe. If you head deeper in, you come across the Banjul Tourist Craft Market, which is where you can bargain for batiks, jewellery, leather bags, wooden masks, carved drums. It's all cash-based here. There's no card payment, so it's best to bring Delazi with you, which of course you all have. So the nearest ATM machine, if you don't have, is just outside the market on Liberation Avenue. But the machines can be unreliable, so don't draw out too much. And personally, I always leave a spare card on board the ship, just in case a machine eats the card. Arch 22 stands at the entrance to Banjul from the far side of the city, coming down south towards the ship. And this is like a massive concrete statement. It was built in 1996 to mark the military coup that brought Yahya Jammeh to power on the 22nd of July, 1994. So that's how it got its name, 22. Now, the arch was designed by Senegalese architect Pierre Goudibi Atepa. It was built to reach 32 meters high, which makes it one of the tallest structures in the Gambia. It's a mix of neoclassical and modern design, complete with a statue on the top of a soldier holding a baby, which was meant to symbolize Jammeh's protective role. Now, Jammeh is a pretty controversial figure in recent Gambian history. He was forced into exile after initially refusing to accept election defeat to Adama Barrow in December of 2016. Ironically, or perhaps prophetically, he left office in 2017, 22 years after taking power in 1994 and commissioning the Arch 22. So you can go up to the observation platform at the top for panoramic views. You can look over the city, the river, the causeway that leads into Banjul, and there's also a small museum inside which is focused on Gambian history. So whilst the politics behind it are a little controversial, the view from the top is well worth the climb. The National Museum of the Gambia is tucked just off of Independence Drive in central Banjul, and it used to be the European-only Bathurst Club. It's small, it's a bit dusty in places, it's not exactly high-tech, but it is packed with treasures. Inside you'll find old maps, colonial-era tickets, musical instruments, Yoruba bridal baskets, carved masks. There's even a life-size Kankurang spirit figure made from baobab bark. And the displays trace Gambia's cultural story from prehistoric tools right the way through to 20th century migration and music. There's also a shady garden out front with toilets and a drink stand. State House in Banjul city centre is the official residence of the President of the Gambia. It's one of the city's most prominent colonial-era buildings. It was originally built during British rule, and it was the house of the Governor of the Gambia. But it's remained a seat of power ever since. It's not open to the public, but you will likely pass near it via Marina Parade. It's heavily guarded. The building combines colonial architecture with later modifications which reflect the country's transition from empire to independence, and photos are strictly prohibited. So I'd avoid loitering near the gates. This is an active government site with very tight security. You can get a passing photo, but be sure not to stand around taking photos. The King Fahad Mosque is Banjul's largest and most important mosque. It's located also on Independence Drive near the heart of the city. It was built in the 1980s with support from Saudi Arabia, and it's named after the late King Fahd. It features these tall minarets, which is traditional, a central dome, a classic Islamic architecture. And it is an active place of worship, especially busy on Fridays and during religious festivals. Now, non-Muslims are generally not allowed inside during prayer, but respectful visits outside those times may be possible. I would recommend always asking for permission and of course dressing modestly if you're going. It's not really a tourist site, but it is a key landmark in the city. And then there's St Mary's Cathedral. This is the main Catholic church in Banjul, and you'll spot it also along Independence Drive, not far from the action. It's been here since 1916. It's not flashy. It's got that quiet, lived-in feel. Sunday Mass is usually pretty busy because this is the heart of the Christian community here. If you're passing by during the day, you are welcome to pop in, again dressed modestly, and keep things quiet if there's a service going on. But again, to enter here, you need to approach the guard to seek permission first. It's calm, it's nice inside. Also, you see a very different sort of life in here from some of the other parts of the capital, and the artwork inside is very distinctive. Now, the Fajara War Cemetery is a peaceful, very well-kept site, not far from Banjul. It's near the coastal suburb of Bakau. It's maintained by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and it contains over 200 graves of soldiers and service personnel who died during the Second World War, and many of them West Africans who were serving in the British forces. Again, it's not a tourist attraction in the usual sense, but it's a quiet, respectful place to visit and reflect. And the grounds are open daily, the entrance is free, there's no visitor centre, it's just beautifully maintained, and it's a space honouring those who serve far from home. And if you are heading out towards Fajara and Bakau, then you might want to stop at Kachikali Crocodile Pool. This is a sacred site with deep roots in local Mandinka tradition. And for generations, locals have believed that the pool has fertility-giving powers. So women struggling to conceive would visit with their families, bringing offerings like cola nuts or small cash donations. And they would take part in ritual bathing in a separate section from the pool, not the crocodile part. And the belief is that by washing with the sacred water and praying at the site, blessings and healing can follow. The Bojang family are the custodians of this pool, facilitate these rituals, blending Islamic and traditional practices together, which is common in Gambian spirituality. And there's a shady garden here and a small museum with a first aid kit. And to round out our time in Bakau, it's worth dropping by the Bakau Craft Market. Smaller and more relaxed than Banjul's Royal Albert Market. And while it's aimed at tourists, but it's considerably quieter, the vendors tend to be a little bit gentler, a little bit more chatty than pushy. And you'll find stalls selling all the usual run of souvenirs. But there's always room to have a proper conversation here with the artisans. Prices are always negotiable and always cash-based, so grab some Delasi first. And finally, back in Banjul, there's the beach. Wide, sandy, surprisingly peaceful, considering it's just a short walk from the city centre. It's not a built-up resort beach, so don't expect lounges or umbrellas, but it's a great place for a quiet stroll or to watch local fishermen hauling in nets, or you'll often see football games, full swing, kids splashing about in the surf. The sea can be a little bit rough for swimming, and there really aren't very many facilities, but it's a good place to unwind, to see daily life in motion, but bring your own water, bring your own sun protection, and bring your own sense of timing too. Here's everything on a map for you. All right, let's move along to Dakar now. All right. Dakar is one of West Africa's most influential cities, politically, culturally, historically. It was once the capital of French West Africa, but it's long been a center for Pan-African thought, for resistance movements, and for post-colonial identity. Today, it's a busy, fast-growing capital. High fashion, hip-hop, street art sit alongside traditional markets and Islamic scholarship. And you'll find layers of history here, from colonial boulevard to the mosques to modern monuments. And it's a city where Wolof, French, Arabic, and English mix in daily conversation. It's where the past and present constantly overlap in a way that is both chaotic but compelling. This is what the port looks like. It looks like they're still building it. And this is why I've given you this very zoomed out view, so you can really get a sense of when we were here last, this was our gangway, and you are walking almost immediately into a building site. And that building site doesn't have any protection around it. There's nothing that separates out the workers' safe zone and the unsafe zone. That's not really a thing. And so be aware of that. Look carefully around you as you're walking through the port. I don't know how much of this will already have been finished or if they've moved on to another project within the port. But it's the usual sort of gangway heading across onto the large pier side, potentially with some building works going on. Again, we're going to have shuttle buses to get you out of the port area. You can see it's a container port. We may or may not be receiving containers there. We'll find out afterwards. And there are taxis that will meet you around the port gate area as well. Let's have a look on a map. There we go. So we are going to be at the furthest pier, as is customary at Holland America Line. And then we'll take the shuttle into the Place de l'Indépendance, so Independence Square, if you like. Alrighty. So let's start close to the port. The Museum of Black Civilizations is one of Dakar's most ambitious and important cultural spaces. It was opened in 2018, and it was built to showcase the achievements, diversity, and legacy of black cultures around the world, something long missing from global museum spaces. Now, the exhibitions cover everything from ancient African kingdoms to modern diaspora art. There's a strong focus on African contributions to science, to spirituality, to resistance. It's spacious, it's modern, it's thoughtfully curated, and then they have rotating displays from across the continent, and beyond actually, that come if you happen to visit again in the future. Allow at least an hour to enjoy this museum. And just next door is another museum, le Musée International sur la biographie du prophète et de la civilisation islamique. So the International Museum of the life of the Prophet and Islamic civilization. It's a striking addition to Dakar's cultural scene. It's very new. It opened in 2023. And it's one of the largest Islamic museums in Africa, focusing on the life of the Prophet Muhammad and the development then of Islamic civilization. Inside, you'll find models, interactive displays, multimedia exhibits that explore the history, art, science, and faith. It's modern, it's air-conditioned, and it is thoughtfully designed. Entry is around 3,000 francs, and just be sure to dress modestly if you want to visit here. And again, about an hour to explore it properly. Nipping across to the other side of town, the Monument du Millénaire sits on the Corniche Road in Dakar. It overlooks the Atlantic. It offers one of the best coastal views in the city. And it was built in 2001 to mark the new millennium, just a year late. It's a tall, angular structure that doesn't always make it into the guidebooks, but it is worth a stop if you're nearby. The monument is covered in inscriptions that celebrate Senegal's place in the world and also its hopes for the future. There's a small viewpoint area, usually a few vendors selling drinks or souvenirs. Obviously, there's no entry fee, it's just open access, so you just walk up, take in the view, enjoy the breeze. The Senegalese Armed Forces Museum sits near the Presidential Palace in Dakar, and it offers a look at the country's military history from pre-colonial warriors to independence-era forces. The exhibits include uniforms, medals, weapons, historic photos, but the standout feature for me is the small collection of the presidential cars used by Senegal's early leaders. It's not a large museum. Some of the displays are a little bit worn, but it's fascinating as a glimpse into Senegal's role in African and global military affairs. The Théodore Monod African Art Museum, which was formerly known as the IFAN Museum, is one of the oldest art museums in West Africa. It's located in Dakar's Plateau district. It's part of the Sheikh Anta Diop University, and it focuses on traditional African art, including masks, textiles, statues, and ritual objects from across the region. Now, it gets mixed feedback. Some people enjoy its simplicity. There really is very little by way of interpretative signage here, but others do get a little irritated by the lack of investment. It's an interesting stop. It's fair to say that with a bit of love, it could be a lot more than it is currently, but if you're in the area and you're interested in African art, then you could enjoy a good half an hour here. The Cathedral of Our Lady of Victories is Dakar's main Catholic cathedral. It's located in the Plateau district, again, not far from the presidential palace, completed in 1936, and it blends Romanesque and local architectural styles. It's got this grand, light-filled interior, striking murals on the inside. It's still an active place of worship. It is the seat of the Archdiocese of Dakar, regular mass services, particularly, of course, on Sundays. And you're welcome to step inside during the day, dress modestly. That's something that's taken very seriously here. And avoid entering during services unless you want to attend the service. It's peaceful, it's well kept, and it offers a calm contrast to the busy streets just outside its doors, and entry is free. Okay, so I've mentioned this President's Palace a couple of times now, so let's take a look at that. The Palais de la République Sénégalaise is the official residence of Senegal's president, and it's one of Dakar's most recognizable buildings. So it dates back to 1907. It was originally built as the governor's residence during the French colonial rule, and it's grand, white, heavily guarded. You cannot go inside, but you can get a good view from the gates on Avenue Léopold Sédar Senghor. So that's the street that you get a good view from. The gardens are beautifully kept, and if you're nearby, it is worth stopping for a photo. But again, the advice, don't linger too long and don't try to film. They really react very badly to filming, but photos here are okay. The African Renaissance Monument is probably Dakar's most eye-catching landmark. Whether you love it or not, it is hard to miss. It stands 52 meters tall. It is the tallest statue in the whole continent of Africa. It was built in 2010 to mark Senegal's post-colonial identity and future ambitions. Now, the bronze sculpture shows a man, woman, and child reaching skyward and facing the Atlantic. It was designed by the Senegalese architect, you've heard his name already, Pierre Goudiaby Atipa, but it was constructed by North Korea's Mansudae Overseas Projects. The monument stands atop one of the twin hills known as Colline des Mamets, which overlook the Atlantic Ocean. And it's had its fair share of controversy over the cost, over the design, but it's become a major attraction. And you can climb to the top via an internal elevator, and then you get these amazing sweeping views over Dakar. The Grand Mosque of Dakar is one of the largest and most important mosques in Senegal, easily recognized by its towering minaret, its striking green and gold detailing, and it was inaugurated in 1964 with support from Morocco, and reflects a blend of North and West African Islamic architecture. The mosque is an active place of worship, especially busy on Fridays, and it plays a central role in religious life in the city. Non-Muslims aren't usually allowed inside, but you can admire the exterior from the street, and it's located right near the city centre, and it's free to access from the outside at any time. Gorée Island lies just 20 minutes by ferry from Dakar, but it feels like stepping into another world. This was once a key hub in the transatlantic slave trade. It's now a peaceful UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the main attraction, though I don't think attraction is quite the right word, is the Maison des Esclaves, the House of Slaves. Now, a museum that tells the story of millions taken here from West Africa. It's not the only building on the site. There's the famous Door of No Return that faces the ocean, a stark, emotional reminder of that history. And the ferry runs daily between Dakar's port for about 5,200 franc return. Then you pay an additional 500 in a tourist tax when you get to the island. The island itself is pedestrian only. There are shady lanes, there are galleries, there are cafes over there as well, which are worth exploring after the museum too. And many of you will be on a Holland America Line excursion going out there as well. Let's have a look at all of that on a map. So, we've seen what's happening in Banjul, we've explored Dakar, we've stood on the same coastline where so many people were taken and where so many are now choosing to build. So let's go back to that line that we left hanging earlier. Africa is a country without a history and without a future. Well, we've already knocked down the first half. The idea that Africa has no history isn't just wrong, it's insulting. It's lazy, and it's been used for centuries to justify everything from colonization to exploitation. But the second half, that one's still floating around in subtle ways. The idea that Africa can't thrive without help, that it's stuck in a crisis, that it's always developing but never developed, that it's defined by poverty or corruption or what's missing rather than what's growing. And sure, the challenges are real, but so is the progress. So is the power of what's happening right now in cities like Dakar, in communities along the Gambia River, in homes, in markets, in classrooms and studios across the whole continent. So let's take a quick look at 3 stories from this region, real stories, that give a different answer to that question of Africa's future. Because maybe, just maybe, it is time for Africa. Let's start with something that's small in size, but big in impact. In rural Gambia, just beyond the reach of the tour buses, communities like Tumani Tenda are running their own ecotourism products. These aren't corporate resorts. These are villages offering homestays, nature walks, craft workshops, and cultural performances, and they're all designed, led, and owned by the people who live there. And this isn't just about giving tourists a nice experience. It's about funding local schools, it's about protecting mangroves, it's about keeping traditions alive on their own terms. And it flips the usual script. Instead of outsiders selling Gambia to the world, the locals are doing it themselves, and doing it better. West Africa's taking the lead in the art scene too. Every 2 years, Dakar becomes the center of the African art world. Dakar, the continent's biggest contemporary art biennial, draws artists, curators, collectors from across the globe. And this isn't your quiet museum kind of art. This is everywhere. In old train stations, on the beach, in the streets. It's bold, it's political, joyful, strange, spectacular. But the message is clear. Africa doesn't need to be invited to the table. It's already creating the culture that's shaping its future. And art is important. Actually, I'd argue it's critical to a thriving society because art isn't just about survival. It's not just about managing, it's about flourishing. It's about enriching communities with culture, about shaping conversations about the future. And in Senegal, that future is being painted, carved, filmed, and danced into life right now. Finally, outside Dakar, something extraordinary is being built from the ground up. Diamniadio is a new city, a smart city. It's designed to ease the pressure on Dakar and to prepare for the future. It's got tech parks, universities, a brand new international airport, a sleek express train, even new parliament buildings. It's a big, bold project. And while it's still in progress, it sends a powerful message. Senegal isn't waiting around to be developed. It's building on its own terms. And it's not just constructing buildings, it's constructing belief in what's possible. So what do we have? A rural village turning tourism into education and environmental care, a capital city where artists are rewriting the cultural narrative of an entire continent, and a brand new city rising out of the dust, built with the confidence that tomorrow isn't something to wait for, it's something to shape. 3 very different stories, but they all point in the same direction. This isn't a continent without a future. It's a continent that is actively building one. When we started, we heard a man say his name, Kunta Kinte. He said it again and again, even as they tried to beat it out of him. Because your name isn't just a word. It's who you are. It's where you've come from. It's what you carry, even when everything else is taken from you. That scene from Roots is hard to watch. Too hard, really. There's a reason I only played you the audio. But what makes it powerful isn't just the pain. It's the resistance. It's the refusal to forget. It's the fight to hold on to history even when the world is trying to rename you. Kunta Kinte is a name this place will never forget. They even renamed this island slave post after him. A permanent act of remembrance to those who were kidnapped from here to be enslaved far from home. And maybe that's where Africa finds its power. Not in pretending that the past didn't happen, not in waiting for someone else to tell its story, but in remembering its own name and shouting that name out loud as it builds its own future. Thank you.